Hello, everybody. We're just going to take a few more seconds here to let people trickle in, and then we will get started.
Yeah.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Good evening. Good to see you. Good to see you, Tom.
You, good to see you.
Back to Santa Barbara.
Yes, I am. I know that. Melissa's that show was crazy. She was so good.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's her first blog, a podcast that she's done.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah.
Let's see. Here we go. Linda's coming.
What was it about?
It's about too many beekeepers.
Yeah.
Too many?
And raising too many honeybees, and tipping the carrying capacity of honeybees, unfortunately at the detriment of the native bees. So we have this thing called Save the Bees, and we're going to add a new word to it: Save the native bees. That's the
Good
big
for you.
move. Okay, so that's the way. So I have one of my 4 children here, Melissa's honeybee Greek for bee, is taking on the plight or activism here of promoting saving the bees by planting more plants in your yard.
By
Period.
planting
Excellent.
more native plants in your yard.
Exactly. Very good. We got to say native plants for native bees, right?
That's right.
There you go.
Which will also help the native birds. So that's
That's
good.
right.
Good all around.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. One of my favorite plants is the Duranta, D-U-R-A-N-T. I'll give a plug for that because I have butterflies, hummingbirds, and minor bees, and anytime natives here bees, and a few honeybees on there too. So Duranta is my favorite plant to plant.
I didn't even
Enough
know
said.
that one.
Yep.
What's
It
that?
was a very good.
Yeah.
Although I was guilty that I have bees.
No, you're
my
okay,
bee-
Tom.
My bees came to me.
That's right. You're grandfathered in.
All right. I'm going to have to cut off the bee talk so we can get to the
Okay.
bird talk.
There you go.
Okay, good. These birds.
It's only incidental bee talk going forward. It is, in fact, a Birdwatchers meeting. So greetings, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Carpinteria Birdwatchers, online only, which is sort of like old times. We'll be hopefully back to the library next month. Watch the carpbirdwatchers.org website, and we'll do a combined online in-person meeting. So this meeting, though, I've got a few announcements before we get to our topic for tonight, which is California Gull. We're doing a single species meeting, which is always fun. So for the announcements, this Saturday, we will have our monthly group outing. And for this month, we're going to go back to the Carpinteria Salt Marsh Nature Park. So we'll meet towards the south end of Ash Avenue, kind of towards the bathrooms and towards the beach at the entrance there. And we'll have a fun time checking out the birds. So that's this Saturday at 8 a.m. And there are more details about that at the carpbirdwatchers.org website. Second announcement. So we did that survey a few months back. And one of the main takeaways that I got from that was there was a lot of interest in doing more for conservation, doing more to not just celebrate birds, but to actively help birds. So we've gone ahead and set up the first of what will hopefully be a continuing series of events where we get together to help birds. This first event will take place on Saturday, November 4th, at the same location at the Carpinteria Salt Marsh. We're going to go out there, and those who choose to can come out and volunteer and help for a few hours with the native plant restoration program there. And we are fortunate tonight that we have Andrea Adams Morden with us. She is the head of the volunteer programs for Carpinteria and has been basically running the native plant restoration programs in Carpinteria as long as I've been a Carpinterian. So Andrea, I'm hoping you can give us just a quick idea of what people can expect if they come out to weed and what the benefits are for bird life of that weeding activity at the marsh.
Well, birds need habitat, and they've been evolving in this area or the plants around here been more or less to the state that they are now for about 24,000 years. And so when the Europeans came, they brought in all these other things, and the other things push out plants that the birds were always adapted to either eating or living in or using in some way. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking out some of those well, they're not all European plants. Some of them are from South Africa, but they were brought in by Europeans. And so we're going to be taking care of some of those. We're going to be meeting at the entrance to the marsh that's by the mobile home park. And if you, it's a good idea to wear closed-toed shoes, gloves. If you have them, I'll bring some extra gloves. Shovels are good for this day. Sometimes we pick weeds that don't need shovels, but I was planning on getting some that do. And one of the things that we're going to be hitting grasses, and what the grasses do is they grow in between the shrubs, and the birds are always in the shrubs around there. And so they take up all that space, and this one thing they make it is so that the birds can't fly in and out of the bushes very well. And the native plants all need mineral soil in order to germinate. And so what the non-native grasses do is they make it so that the native plants can't germinate, and so we don't get any new growth. And so that's what we're going to be working on. So if anyone wants to come, we're meeting at 10 o'clock at the entrance that's closest to the mobile home park on Ash Avenue.
Okay, so that'll be a little later in the morning, right, than our 8 o'clock meeting on this Saturday, and at the other end of Ash Avenue. So, basically, I mean, it's not that big a location. I'm sure we'll be able to find you. But thanks a lot, Andrea.
The last entrance.
Okay. And then one last announcement. I just wanted to mention, it is coming into Christmas bird count season. There is a sign-up form at the birdwatchers.org website, where there will also be a post about the weeding day. So I apologize, that isn't up currently, but within the next few days, there'll be more details there. But it is also coming up on the Christmas bird count. There is a sign-up form on the website. A couple people have signed up so far. I'd love to see a lot more sign up. We had a record-breaking year last year, which was very exciting, and I hope we can have a good level of participation again and find lots of birds on count day. Count day this year will be on Saturday, December 16th. So put that day in your calendar if you're interested in helping out. And I think that is it for announcements. Any other quick items to share? Do people want to have any really exciting recent birding experiences they want to share with the group? Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Hi, thank you all. I'm not responding to that question yet, John, but I want
Okay.
a little late. We're sorry, we were out walking and
Not a problem.
And I heard that there was an event for plants, to try to help pull out something so that natives can grow. I think that's what I heard. And I just want to ask if anyone has any contact information, questions, concerns, whatever, about the pampas grass that's growing that I've noticed. I'm sure it's growing all over the place in spots, but I've noticed a big clump on the bluffs. And
Yeah.
right. And it's just, from our experience, mine in particular, of driving up north in the last few years, I've watched it grow from San Luis Obispo, a little bit north, Cambria area, now all the way at least up to Half Moon Bay when I was up there a few weeks ago. And it's just, it's spreading and going up and all over the place. So does anybody have any idea about resources to contact or?
Yeah, Andrea is definitely the person to contact about this. So Andrea,
Okay,
take it away.
I've been talking to the city about that clump for a good year now, at least. I've been taking the seed heads off of it, and I've been hoping that they would get somebody out there. We have lost our recreation and parks director. We aren't going to get one until after they get a city manager, because they figured that the new city manager would want to be involved in picking the recreation and parks director. Though I'm not exactly sure, because they took maintenance of the parks out of recreation and parks, and they put it into the guys that take care of the streets and everything.
Public Works Department.
Public Works, thank you.
Okay.
And so, I don't know, maybe I'm just gonna have to go over there and educate those people. We don't have to go to the marsh and pull weeds. We can go, this month, we have to go to the marsh. So I've already announced it to all my people. But, you know, if you guys want to go pull weeds other places, there's plenty of places in Carp to do it. And I know where all the weeds are in all the parks.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that
Thank you, Andrea. Later, somehow, John, maybe Andrea in the, I don't know if the chat's open, but I'd like to be able to get your contact info, and maybe I can get it through John.
Yeah.
feel free to
I
share
can
it, Andrea.
put my phone number in the chat.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. I don't see a chat option on my, but that's okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
Zoom's interface
Yeah, I
is
do. So,
challenging.
and also Doug and I had a great birding experience in Napa Valley, in when was September. I was poo-pooing this opportunity to go. A friend of mine said, go to this winery because there's a falconer. And they, you know, give an hour and a half wine tasting and a falcon display. And I thought, I don't need that. I know everything about raptors, you know, because we go to the Ojai Raptor, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, then he didn't let me go. He sent me a video. It was very interesting. I had a bunch of questions, and Doug and I got to spend from 10 a.m. until 1:30 when we left. We were the only two people with this falconer person, a woman who brought out 5 gorgeous birds, and we fed, you know, and flew them, kestrels and hawks, and an owl was right here forever. And I got to pet it down to its, you know, skull. It just was fantastic. And she didn't stop speaking about them. I thought she was going to talk a lot about their jobs at the vineyard, which is a much shorter. You can get that in a 20-minute talk at the most. But she didn't shut up about those birds. She loved them, and they were beautiful, and it was really, really wonderful. Yeah.
I think anybody who's had that up close raptor experience, you know, knows what you're talking about. It's amazing. And, you know, I'm always looking for ideas for, you know, outings and meetings for bird watchers. I should talk to the raptor people. I know we've got some in with the Eyes in the Sky folks up at Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History, and there's the Ohio Raptor Center.
Yeah.
I will put out feelers because that is a neat concept. Andrea, did you have something to add?
He just periodically has their raptor people talk about their thing that they do there. And then you could go birding over at Arroyo Hondo if you work it out for the right weekend.
These are all excellent possibilities. So yeah, I will get on that. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and move things on then to the official subject matter for tonight, which is the California Gull. And to do that, I need to share my screen. Let's see if I can do this right. Yeah, I think I want to do it like this. I wonder why it's not letting me optimize for video. Maybe my connection isn't good enough. All right, there is going to be a video as part of this, but it may be kind of chunky, which I apologize in advance. Let's see. So are you seeing my California Gull slide there? All right, thumbs up from Paul, thanks. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to be talking about California gulls tonight, a single species, and some other gulls will probably invade the talk a little bit because when you're talking about gulls, you know, the boundaries between the different species become kind of challenging, and it's good to know the similar species and get an idea of what you might be looking at. But I'm just going to go ahead then and talk first about their life history a little bit. Here's a range map. And this is from the All About Birds website. And it's kind of an interesting map. You know, some of the other gulls we have around here are not this migratory, like the Western gulls don't really cover this much distance, but California gulls definitely do. They are highly migratory. And if you look here, you know, it's got the area in blue where we live. It's got the yellow areas that they are in the spring and fall as they go to and from their breeding grounds. And then they've got the areas where they breed, which is largely in the interior of the country. There's a little bit of breeding. It's kind of hard to see on this map. There's a little purple dot right there on the Bay Area where they have started doing breeding, which is relatively recent. But for most of you know, the past few centuries, if you wanted to see California gulls nesting, you had to go inland. So they go to these inland lakes, the Great Salt Lake, Mono Lake, lots of other places, and actually breed there. And so, they're, in the generic sense, they're seagulls, right? People call them seagulls, but they spend a substantial part of their life away from the ocean. And then in the winter, they come back to hang out with us. And one thing about this map, as you look at it, is, it's not, they don't completely disappear from here during the breeding season. If you go out birding at Carpinteria State Beach, you will see California gulls almost guaranteed any day of the year. There are a few of them that hang around, but the numbers do change a lot over the course of the year. And I wanted to go ahead and look at this abundance map that they have at eBird, because I think it's really a wonderful tool for kind of visualizing what's going on with these birds over the course of the year. So here we have that. I'm going to minimize all of you. So if you wave at your screen, I'm not going to see you because I've minimized the window that shows the video of the other participants. But this lets me see the whole interface of this map. So what this shows you is it has different colors for how abundant California gulls are in different parts of their range at different times of year. So this is the very beginning of January. This is January 4th. And I'm going to step forward a week at a time. And we're now in February, now in March. And you can see they're shifting away from the coast. The coast is, going towards the left on this abundance graphic. So it's becoming more yellow and orange, not so much purple. And there's a lot more gulls showing up here in the middle parts of the country, or the western interior of the country. So we're into April, May. In fact, I got to zoom out a little bit because there's all the way up into Canada. June, July, August, and now they start coming back. So again, if you're bird watching in Santa Barbara County, as I usually am, there's this big movement that happens. We see them leaving, and then we see them coming back. And by the end of the year, by November, December, the numbers are way down in most of the interior parts of the country. Just a few, like a cluster, I guess, around northern Utah, the Great Salt Lake, where they do hang out in the wintertime. But here, we'll zoom in, and you can kind of see that now in Santa Barbara, we're back to these really dark purple signs along the coast, which means that, these numbers mean like a birder of average skill out there for an hour covering a kilometer distance might see 36 California gulls. So that's a pretty abundant species in the wintertime for us. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead then and pop back into the presentation slides. Any questions, though, about stuff we've talked about so far? Observations? Like, I'm not sure I noticed for a long time that these gulls were doing this. I would go out and I would see gulls. There's just a lot of gulls out there. But as I started paying more attention, like I would see things like this. So I was hawk watching in the spring in April at Hunt Drive up in Montecito, and a big flock of gulls comes over. And I'm not that close to the ocean there. It's sort of an unusual thing. But once you start looking for it in the spring and the fall in Southern California, you will see a lot of movement of California gulls. You'll see these big flocks of gulls, and they're circling to gain lots of altitude and then making tracks. They're migrating. They're doing the migratory thing. So it's just fun to see and kind of exciting to sort of experience this drama of what their lives are like. I was going to share a video, a little bit of it, and there's a link on the Carp Birdwatchers website or in the description for the YouTube live stream that links to the full video that I certainly recommend. Again, not sure how the quality is going to come through on the live stream, but I'm going to try to show just a couple minutes of this, because I think it's really interesting about what happens when the gulls head inland and what that breeding is like.
My name is Christy Nelson, and I work with Point Blue Conservation Science, and I monitor the California Gull colony out here at Mono Lake. California's gull is a bird unlike any other. Anything that can survive this highly caustic, salty lake water is an amazing animal. So Point Blue's research on the California gulls is a really unique project, and one that we have a 35-year data set and counting. One of the major goals of the research is to see what can we learn about the relationships of the gull colony and the health of the gull population, and how that in turn is representing conditions within the lake. We want gulls to be an indicator of ecosystem health. Historically, the species of California gulls nested entirely in inland arid lakes, like Great Salt Lake in Utah and the Mono Lake, because of the food resources primarily, and that there's predator-free nesting islands to nest on. When the California gulls come here in the spring, there is not a lot of food out here. Once the lake warms up, the alkali flies, which are lining the shoreline right now by the millions, they're one of the primary food sources for the California gull. The technique the gulls mostly use is to open their mouth as wide as they can and run as quickly as they can, and it's pretty entertaining to watch. The other major food resource that the gulls are eating out here are these brine shrimps. So they're just taking the shrimp that happen to be on the surface. Chicks are starting to hatch at the end of May, and so then these little young gulls, fairly soon after they fledge from the nesting islands, they actually migrate back to the coast. And the California gulls can live to be 20 or even 30 years old. Being colonial means that there's relatively few of these big colonies. That makes each individual colony really crucially important for not just the local population, but even the species as a whole.
Okay, so I'm going to cut it off there and move on. But I really like that talk. I'm actually up in Mammoth Lakes now and haven't had a chance to go look for gulls, and there's probably still a few of them out there. But certainly in the summertime, it's great to go there and see these big flocks of California gulls. Say, hey, I know you guys. I saw you back in Carpinteria. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about just sort of move more into identification. And we've done a lot of meetings about gulls, and we've talked about gull identification a lot. So I'm going to try not to repeat everything in those meetings. But certainly if you find this topic interesting, we have a back catalog of meetings talking about different aspects of local gull identification. So this is just going to focus on California gulls and kind of skim the surface of the topic. So one thing I want to do is go through the different ages of the gulls, because like all our gulls, their appearance changes dramatically over the course of the gull's life, which is one of the reasons why it's challenging to ID them, because they have so many different looks. So it's good to familiarize yourself with how they look at different phases. So here is a juvenile gull I saw in August at the Carp Creek estuary. This gull was probably a month old at this point, maybe a couple months old. Just gotten fledged and headed out and left whatever inland location it bred at and came to the coast. Brownish overall, this kind of characteristic checkerboard pattern on the upper parts. Pretty similar to a lot of other gull species in their juvenile form. Most of the juvenile gulls we see around Carpinteria are going to be juvenile western gulls, because they breed locally and they don't look that much different from this. So it's important to focus on the details. A juvenile California gull, though, is lighter overall. A juvenile western gull is going to be like dark chocolatey brown, more so than this. There's, go to the beach in the late summer, early fall, and you'll have many opportunities to compare them and see what they look like. So here I'm calling this a first cycle gull, and I'm putting it in quotes because I'm not actually sure how old this gull is. But in gull talk, we typically talk about like first cycle, second cycle, or first year, second year. California gulls, like all of the larger gulls, take about 4 years to reach their full adult plumage. But again, there's a lot of variety. And again, if you go watch those earlier gull talks, we go into more detail about this. This photo is representative of this individual gull, but another gull of the same age and the same species might have a very different look. There's a lot of variety to wrap your head around. But here, this is a first cycle gull, so it's moved on from that juvenile plumage. It retains some faded feathers they're from that time. These greater coverts and median coverts look like their juvenile feathers have not been replaced yet. But it's getting these new feathers on the back and the scapulars here. And this kind of anchor pattern that has this sort of dark center and this white lower edge on these feathers, that's kind of a characteristic California gull first cycle look. The beak is really useful to pay attention to with all gulls and California gulls in particular. It's very helpful. It's kind of medium to long, but parallel-sided, not really swollen, like a Western gull's beak is thicker, more swollen towards the gonus, this little point down here. So long, parallel-sided, flesh-colored at the base with a black tip and a fairly sharp cutoff. This is sort of the dipped in ink look that immature California gulls have. And other local gulls can have similar looks, but with California gulls, they're really in the immature stages, they're going to all have this dipped in ink beak. That's a real helpful thing to look for. Also, the overall shape of the bird is really helpful in distinguishing it from other similar looking gulls. It's relatively long and tapered wings. The whole body is relatively elongated compared to, say, a Western gull. And we'll talk about that more a little later. But it's a good thing to pay attention to. And then the legs. Leg color is also very helpful with gulls. You can start to see this has sort of bluish on the leg above it's technically analogous to an ankle, I think, right? In a human, but I think of it as the knee. Birds have the backwards knee. That's because it's really their ankles. But this part of the upper part of the leg here, it's got this sort of bluish look to it, which again is a California gull thing. Okay, let's move on. So a second cycle gull. So it's a little bit older. Still has that characteristic beak going on, still has that same size and shape. That's really one of the great things about focusing on size and shape when you're gull watching, because all this plumage stuff changes so dramatically over the bird's life. But the size and shape is quite consistent. So if you key in on that, it's a really helpful clue. But you can see now it's starting to get its adult mantle feathers. The gray feathers on the back are coming in. And you can see the shade, the specific shade of gray, which is amazingly important for gull identification. I keep talking about all these different things that are important, and it's true, they really are all important. I think one of the main things with gull ID is to not fix on one feature. You want to look at all the elements of the bird. You want to put them into a matrix, and you want to say, okay, some of these features on a given individual might favor California gull. Some might look more like a Western gull. But if most of them are favoring California gull, that'll kind of help push you in that direction. Or vice versa. Maybe it's you're thinking, oh, that looks sort of like a ring-billed gull. Again, and especially in some of these immature forms, it can be challenging. So you want to look at, all these things. Okay, let's move on though to a third cycle gull. And here it's starting to look a lot like an adult gull, a lot like an adult California gull. In fact, you kind of have to look closely to even see what distinguishes this from an adult gull. But two key things about this: it has the black primaries that the adult gull has, but it doesn't have the white spots yet. And an adult California gull that's 4 years old or older will have white spots in the tips of its primaries, and this bird lacks that. And also you can just barely see a little bit of its tail there. There's still some black in the tail, which is an immature gull thing to have dark tail feathers. Adult California gulls will have all white tails. So this bird is a subadult. It's almost an adult, but not quite there. But otherwise it's looking a lot like an adult California gull. And finally, we'll go here to an adult California gull. And again, you can see that characteristic California gull size and shape. It's now got the white spots in the primaries of the adult gull. This look of the beak is really helpful. It's got like a black ring, but it's got a red spot inside it, right? And that's a lock for California gull, almost always. There are some ages of gull where a Western gull can have something kind of similar looking. They can start to get a red spot there with some black still on the beak. But 95% of the time, if you see a beak with this color pattern around Carpinteria, it's a California gull. So again, you want to look at lots of things and put them all together. Okay, so been talking for a while. I'm sort of previewing this. It is, I think, important to have a strategy when you go to identify gulls. And I've been talking about it already. But one thing I do want to emphasize is this idea of patience. You don't want to try and identify gulls quickly. Take your time, enjoy them like a fine wine. You know, you want to look at those gulls and really appreciate all the nuances in front of you. And you want to take the time to look at that whole matrix of features that you're going to compare to try and decide what this bird is that you're looking at. Sometimes it'll be more obvious. And as you see more of them and get practice, that'll become easier to do. But it's good to take your time. In the earlier talks, I quote David Sibley's commentary from his field guide about gull, the importance of patience when looking at gulls. The hasty approach will not be rewarded, he says. So a second element of the gull ID strategy that I recommend is to really focus on comparisons. Gulls show up on our beaches in these mixed flocks with different species together, like they are in this photo. And that can be really useful, because if you can figure out what any of them are, then you can use those ones you've identified as a decoder ring to help you identify the others. So in this photo, this is a Western gull in the back and a California gull in the front. And if you compare them, like if I looked at the mantle color, the gray of the back and the upper wing of a California gull, and tried to decide, well, exactly how gray is that? Is that sort of a medium gray like a California gull, or is it a lighter gray like a ring-billed gull, or a darker gray like a Western gull? It might be kind of hard to tell. You know, it's gray. I mean, it's a little light, a little dark. The lighting makes it look different. But if you've got another gull next to it with this noticeably darker mantle, that's hugely helpful. You go, oh, okay, that's the Western gull. So this is the California gull. It really helps. Same thing like comparing the feet color here. You know, like here's the Western gull's leg and feet, and here's the California gull's legs and feet. Very different, and it really stands out more when you have a comparison that you can make. Size and shape. You know, this bird's a little smaller than this bird. Lean on those comparisons. They're really helpful. Focus on structure. I always say, you know, plumage lies, but structure tells the truth. The bird's feathers change and wear and fade and get replaced, and they age and their plumage changes. But the size and shape will stay the same. The structure will still be there to guide you regardless of all that. So again, this photo doesn't show it very well, but California gulls are a little longer and more tapered than Western gulls. And this reflects the fact that they're more migratory. You know, in general with birds, the more long-range migration they do, the longer their wings are. Their wings have evolved for that long-range flight, and they tend to be longer. Birds that are more local in their annual movements will have shorter wings. And you can see that once you learn to really focus on it. And the bare parts. So again, you want to look at the plumage, but you really want to look at the parts where the plumage isn't there, and you can see the bare skin of the bird's legs and feet, or the bird's beak. Eye color is very important if you're close enough to get a good look at it. All of these things are super helpful. And again, the overall theme here is you really want to try to move beyond just, you know, matching the picture that you have in the field guide to the bird you're looking at. I mean, that's useful, but you can be more effective if you really focus on these key aspects. So I'm going to talk about the big four, just briefly. These are the 4 gull species we see the most of locally on the screen at the same time, so you can kind of compare them to each other. Some labels on them, which you may or may not be able to see because of the obscuring zoom controls. We have California in the upper right, Western, ring-billed, and Heermans. And I tried to size these photos so they're accurate with respect to each other in terms of relative sizes. But this really gives you an idea of the differences in shape that you're looking for. And at first glance, you know, like those top 2 birds, the Western and the California gull, they're both gull-shaped. I mean, what am I even talking about? But if you focus in on it and really take the time to study them out at the beach and look at one, look at the other, California gull is just a little longer, a little slimmer, more of a stretched out teardrop shape. And the Western gull, a little bit stockier, a little bit thicker body, a little bit less length to the wings. And the overall effect is that it's a more robust outline than this elongated California gull look. And then ring-billed and Heermans have their own characteristic shapes. Again, I won't talk about them so much because this is a California gull talk. But zooming in, again, focusing on those beaks, it's the same sort of thing. You look at them and you go, oh, well, they all look like they have gull beaks. Well, they do, but there are differences and they're worth studying because they will help you differentiate those birds. Ring-billed gull's beak is a little shorter compared to the California gull. Western gull's beak is a little longer and a little thicker, a little heavier, more swelling here at the gonus than the California gull. Heermans gull is actually kind of easy because it's bright orange. Eye color is also really important. California gulls and ring-billed gulls look pretty similar in a lot of respects, but the adult ring-billed gull has this very light iris, and the California gull always has this dark iris. So if you get a good look at it, you can look at that. Like this orange spot on the beak is helpful too. Ring-billed gull has 0 orange on its beak, right? But a lot of times this orange on the California gull's beak can be pretty faint and hard to see. But the eye color is a dead giveaway. You see that white staring eye, that's a ring-billed gull probably. And that dark eye is much more likely a California gull. Same with the leg color. I talked about this before. I found that gull leg color is easier for me to assess when I think of it as human skin tones. I think I've just evolved to pay more attention to human skin tones. So Western gull, very pink, kind of, Caucasian person skin tone, a little sunburned even. California gull, not a very healthy looking skin tone for a human. If I see a, person with skin like a California gull, I'm thinking this could be a person who needs to go see a healthcare professional because they're not looking too good. Adult ring-billed gull, especially in breeding plumage, very yellow legs. California gulls can get pretty yellowish legs too, and when they're in their breeding plumage. And then Heermans gulls, very dark legs, so very distinctive from these other birds. And that's pretty much it. That's what I had to share. We can talk more about California gulls. I have a link. We can look at some more California gull photos if you just want to do sort of a free-for-all and step through some photos. Here's a nice adult breeding plumage California gull. I haven't talked so much about that. It's a plumage we don't see as often, but it's really quite attractive. It loses the shading on the nape. It's this very white head. I don't know. I think it's attractive. I think gulls are pretty. I didn't always think that way, but I think that way now. So why don't I throw things open for feedback and questions? Do people have comments about California gulls or gulls in general? Things I haven't talked about I could? Yeah, Paul.
So their migratory range is pretty extensive, and they have to adapt to their food supply. So in the movie that you showed here, it shows them, feeding on brine and the flies on the Utah lake. What do they do in California and the ocean? Anchovies, sardines?
They are extremely opportunistic, and this is true of most gulls, but California gulls are certainly this way. They are omnivores. They will eat anything they can choke down, and sometimes they'll make a good try at something that they can't quite choke down. It could be sort of scary looking to see them try and eat something too big for them. But yeah, they eat fish. They scavenge at the beach. They scavenge at landfills. One of the funny things about bird watchers is we like to go to places like sewage treatment plants and landfills, because if you want to see gulls, those are both very good places to see them, because they will go to a landfill and just eat garbage, and there'll be huge flocks of gulls there doing that. But they'll pick stuff out at the beach. They will take advantage of other opportunities. When we were doing our snowy plover docenting on Carpinteria State Beach, the Western gulls in particular, but also California gulls to the extent they were around, were always a concern, because if they see an opportunity to grab an egg or a chick from a beach nesting bird like a snowy plover, they are very happy to take advantage of that. So yeah, they eat lots of things. In fact, I was reading in these inland breeding locations, they will sometimes fly like 20 or 30 miles away from the nest site to feed and then come back to the nest site. That, you know, their nesting locations are very, you know, they require very certain kinds of protection. Like they want to be on an island in a lake, you know, something where land-based predators can't get at them because they nest on the ground. And if there isn't food there, they're okay with that. They want to have a well-protected nest site, and then they'll travel, you know, they'll commute on a daily basis to go to a landfill or something to get food and then come back to the nest. Chris, I saw you had your hand up too. Did you have a question or comment?
Thank you. It's all so interesting. I honestly didn't know that there are all kinds of different gulls until I met you. And I said seagull, and you corrected me right away, or you offered me a suggestion. So are those the other ones, the Western gulls that breed on Anacapa?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. And then I assume that those must be Western gulls that breed too at Point Lobos then, because they're on the coast.
There you're outside my.
Oh, okay.
I'm
And
not really sure. Western gulls do breed up and down the coast, though. I know that.
okay. And where do they go at night? You know how all the birds fly at night when the sun's ready to set and they just all take off? Does anybody know? I think I've asked you this before, John.
You know, I've certainly seen roosting flocks of gulls. You know, they roost on the beach, they roost at estuaries, you know, they roost inside the Carpinteria salt marsh. If they find a spot with a big mud flat, they're happy to go there. You know, I think it's like a safety concern. You know, they want a place where they can spend the night without worrying too much about being preyed upon by land-based predators. So things like breakwaters, you know, seem to get lots of gulls on them overnight. You know, they take advantage of their mobility. Anywhere they can go find a spot to hang out, and they'll hang out in big numbers. So again, it's, you know, it's a little daunting from an identification perspective, but it's also kind of fun once you sit down and really just start saying, okay, I've got 200 gulls in front of me. What do I actually have here? Okay, so what time are we at?
Wait.
Yeah, more questions or
Well,
comments?
look at their legs.
Yeah.
So this guy's almost got yellow legs. And
Yep.
this guy looks like an immature of this guy, but he's got white legs. And then
Yeah.
this one, is this a ring-billed gull because it's sort of yellowish? Or is that a California gull that has yellowish legs?
So it's hard for me to tell from all these photos, but all the gulls that I can see well in this picture, I would be inclined to think are California gulls. And
Even
that variety, you know, well, maybe this one back on the right here looks a little smaller. Maybe it's a little lighter on the mantle. Maybe that would be a candidate for a ring-billed gull, but you can't see it very well. Yeah, it's hard to say. But the variety of leg colors you're seeing here is actually a really good example of what I was kind of alluding to earlier. Every individual gull is different. And, you know, a photo can show you, or a picture in the field guide, an illustration in the field guide can show you one particular look. But one of the real challenges of gull identification is that if you've got 10 gulls in front of you, you're going to see 10 different leg colors. You know, it's just, you gotta look at everything and kind of put it all together and gradually move towards a sense like, oh, I'm reasonably sure this is a California gull. And, you know, with practice, you can get more assured about that. You know, I feel like I'm still in the early stages of my gull education. So it's if you like the challenge of learning how to identify birds, then gulls are a great bird to check out. If you dislike that challenge, you probably never want to go beyond a gull species and you move on to the next bird, which is fine too. The gulls don't care. They're just going to do what they do. Okay, I guess I'm going to go ahead and click through what I've done here. This is going to eBird, and this is something I do a lot of just for fun. But I'll go into eBird and I'll look for a species and I'll say, okay, show me all the photos that people have uploaded in eBird. There's almost 38,000 photos of California gull in eBird. And just show me them rated, you know, the highest rated photos first. So these are, you know, user assigned ratings of California gulls. and just kind of, step through them, and they're just, fun to look at. In this one, you can kind of see it's one of the more subtle aspects of gull ID, but if you're trying to identify flying gulls overhead, that was sort of a frontier I ignored for decades in my gull ID, but now I try to pay more attention to it. California gull has a relatively white underwing, a comparable look at a Western gull. They have this darker gray that kind of comes through, just as they have a darker gray on the surface of the wing. Their underwing is also darker in the flight feathers, the primaries and secondaries. The black tips of the wing are relatively extensive in a California gull compared to some other similar gulls. So, if you get into just how much black was there, that can be a clue. Big white spots, helpful. But again, the differences between the gull species are kind of subtle. So you need to look at a lot of gulls to get comfy with that. This is a breeding plumage California gull. This is in April in Santa Clara. You can see there's this orbital ring, they call it. It's a little ring around the eye that's bright red, or dark red, I guess I'd say. That orbital ring color can be very helpful in identification. It's basically diagnostic. California gull, dark red orbital ring. Right? Other gull species, different colored orbital rings. So in the breeding season, when that orbital ring is prominent, if you're nice and close to the bird, you get a really good look at it. Look for that. This is interesting. So here's a first cycle gull, right? This is sort of your basic immature gull. I'm thinking, wow, this thing is really highly rated. It's got 45 5-star ratings. Why is it rated so highly? So that I looked at it and I realized, oh, because this bird is in Florida. This bird has no business being there. So it gets a lot of attention from eBird's users. And in eBird, they're recommended guidelines for rating photos. They don't want you to rate it based on the rarity. They want you to say, it's not whether it's a pretty picture, it's not whether it's a rarity or a common bird, it's does it show the bird well? And this certainly shows the bird well. But I'm not sure it's a 45 5-star rating bird, except that it's in Florida. So this makes me want to click through to the checklist and see what other information is there. And yeah, 260 laughing gulls. See, out here, the laughing gull would be the exciting bird, right? But there it's like, 260, give or take. But one California gull, apparently a first county record. So, a lot of attention paid to this California gull, which is kind of a fun thing. I haven't traveled that much for birding, but this past couple of weeks, my wife Linda and I went on a trip to the desert Southwest. So we went to Utah, went to Nevada. It was just a lot of fun. And one of the things that's fun about it is I'm seeing birds that are commonplace there. Like I'm seeing, red crossbills and Cassin's finches, and they're very exciting to me because in Santa Barbara, they're very exciting birds. But in, Bryce Canyon, they're just there. So it was fun to get good looks at a lot of those birds. Okay, maybe we'll just look at a few more. Oh, we're still in this guy's checklist. All right, let's get back to the gulls. Is it here? Yeah, here. Okay. Another breeding plumage California gull in Nevada. Washoe Lake State Park. We did not go there on our trip through Nevada. Our birding in Nevada was basically like, oh, what birds could we get from the car while we're driving at 70 miles an hour? A little more of the winter plumage look that we see most of the time in Carpinteria, where it's got the dark flecks on the back of the neck, the nape. Gull in the snow. There's another one here that I thought was interesting. Another first cycle gull. This one where it's supposed to be in Humboldt. There's a good look at it. Again, this winter plumage gull with that dark nape. In the winter, California gulls have this definite heavy shading on the base of the neck, the back of the neck. So that's a good feature to look for. This is interesting. So here again, you can see this is a little bit of maybe like a third cycle, right? There's no white in the wingtips. And it still has a little bit of its immature plumage, these greater coverts here on the wing. Those don't have the adult look yet. But here on the the back, the adult plumage is there. Sometimes people just, they like a good photo of a gull's tongue and close up of the face. Give it, 5-star ratings. Sure, it's a great photo. So here's a good comparison shot. So it doesn't mention this, but this is California gull on the right, ring-billed gull on the left. This is in Butte, California in March. And actually at some of the interior breeding sites, California gulls and ring-billed gulls will both occur there. They do breed in proximity to each other. So this is a look you might see in a lot of places. I have birdwatched from the I-5 Vista Point rest stop southbound on the San Diego freeway. Sometimes you just need to get that checklist in. You've got a long day and you don't want to miss your chance to have a checklist that day. It's the other one. There was one other kind of a cool, here's a good example. So I liked this photo for a couple things. It's an action photo. You're asking what these gulls eat. This one eats pretzels. There's a pretzel coming down there. And then you can also see it's got that third cycle look. So it's almost in the adult plumage, but again, no white in the wingtips and just a little bit of black in the tail that you can see there. This may be like 2/3-year-old gull. All right, well, as you could probably tell, I could look at gulls all night, but we don't have all night, so I will stop the share. Any final comments or input?
I have another question.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
I noticed that there's thousands of them on that island in Mona Lake. How does a bird, adult, find its chick? Do they do it by smell? Do they smell?
I'm not sure. I think I may have heard some things that sound is important, like they can recognize the call of the chick. A lot of birds have fairly poorly developed senses of smell. And I don't know if gulls are one of them, but it wouldn't shock me if
Have you
they
ever
were.
been in one of those islands? You'd need to have a poor sense of smell.
Yeah, I visited a few gull nesting colonies. One of my sort of formative experiences when I was 12, I got to go with a biologist in Tampa Bay out to a laughing gull colony out on a sandbar there. And as we're getting out of the boat to go check them out, he handed me a cap. He's like, "Oh, you need to wear this." I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Oh yeah, you really need to wear this because the gulls will fly over and you'll be,
Inundated.
festooned with gull droppings, and you need to have a hat." But yeah, it's very. I mean, it's impressive those big concentrations. And I don't know how they identify their chicks, but apparently they can. I was kind of curious about, like, do gull pairs stay together? And I couldn't really find, throughout the year, and I couldn't really find good information on it. In at least some cases, though, with California gulls, their pairs will stay with the same mate for multiple years. So that implies to me that maybe they stay together the whole year, or maybe they just meet up on the nesting grounds. Yeah, I don't really know. I know with some birds like waterfowl, they do stick together, and they basically, for them, like these birds have really long migrations that go up to the Arctic tundra to breed, and then, only have a few months before they have to leave again. They don't want to spend any time like forming pairs on the nesting grounds. They want to be all mated up when they arrive. So that's why you get these like, swans and geese that are just, with the same mate for life, basically. I don't think gulls are quite that true in the sort of medieval sense. But they do stick together a lot, apparently, year to year. Okay, other comment? Yeah, Chris.
Has anybody here not been to Anacapa during the breeding season? Have you all been there? Yes, you've been there? No?
I've been near there.
Anacapa, but not
I haven't been on
breeding.
the island.
It's like the Galapagos. I was shocked. I had no idea. I went on a school field trip with middle schoolers out there. No idea what I was getting into. And it's fantastic, fantastic. And one of the things that, they're just everywhere. At least the year I was there, thousands and thousands. And there were 4 eggs 4 hatchlings. I don't know what to call them, instead of 3 that year, because it was a year they were thinking anyway. There were lots of these red crabs coming up from Baja and a lot of food, whatever. It was very populated, thousands and thousands. You have to watch your steps so you don't step on them. And it's very noisy, and they want you to walk doing this because the males will fly, because you can't get far away from the nests and the chicks. So the males may swoop down and, try to pick up your scalp, right, to scare you away. It's impressive. It's wonderful. It's just wonderful. Yeah. May, June. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that Anacapa had been closed for a while, right? They were doing work on the landing structure, the
Right.
staircase that takes you up. So I don't know if it's been possible in recent years to get out there, but certainly I look forward to the chance to do it.
Yeah, don't miss it. It's so fantastic.
They don't let you go to Santa Barbara when the pelicans are nesting.
They
Same
don't.
deal. Yeah.
They don't what?
Santa Barbara Island is closed when the pelicans are nesting.
They do have now a pretty sizable brown booby nesting colony on Sutil Island, which is the little rock right next to Santa Barbara Island. So if you go on the Island Packers pelagic trips, that's a place they'd like to take you by Santa Barbara Island, and they pull up close and you look at the boobies on the rocks, and it's very exciting.
Fun.
When did they nest?
I don't know. Summertime, basically. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead then and wrap things up. Thank you, everybody, for showing up and participating and listening to me yak interminably about California gulls. A little preview. Well, I don't have the next meeting completely organized yet, so I won't give you a preview, but watch carpbirdwatchers.org for an update about the November meeting, and I'll get those details up soon. And probably we won't be having a meeting in December because we'll be having meetings connected with the Christmas count. So there will still be fun things to do with Carp Birdwatchers, just not a typical monthly meeting. But thank you all very much, and I'll see you on Saturday for an outing at the Carp Salt Marsh, if you're coming to that, which would be great. And then Andrew will be seeing you on the following Saturday, right? The 4th of November is Weeding Day. Okay, and that'll be a lot of fun. We can inaugurate this new era of Carp Birdwatchers doing bird helping, not just bird appreciation. Andrew, do you have something to say? I think you're muted. Can you unmute?
If people like doing it, we could go to a different park every month.
Yeah, I'm viewing this very much as a pilot project that if it goes well, we will continue to do, because I think it's a neat thing to be able to do. And there may be a certain amount of bird watching that happens while we're pulling weeds,
Of course.
Okay, well, thanks everybody, and I will see you on Saturday or at the next meeting or whenever I see you.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you, Tom.